Hello and welcome again to RHI's Foundation Courage, Hope, Attitude, and Inspiration, known as RHI. This series is made possible by Wilson Keyhone Winningham, and today we have a special guest, Mr. John Myrland. John, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And I want you to share your journey here and how you came to RHI.
Well, I had on June 29th, 2008, I had a stroke, a cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, which was a blood clot. And I discovered it, my wife and I were both at home, and I discovered it when I was in the kitchen and I went to pick up a platter that was on the kitchen counter, and my left hand went up to pick up the dish, but my right hand would not. And so I pulled my hand back and thought about it for a second and said, let me try this again. So I tried it again, and my right hand still didn't work. So I walked out of the kitchen into the family room, and by now my arm is moving and I'm having some seizures. And my wife was coming in the back door. She was out hopefully planting spring flowers, which she never got around to. And I said, honey, I think something's wrong. My arm is doing all sorts of things. I said, I think something's wrong. And the next 5 minutes are kind of a blur. She ran out of the room. She thought maybe I was having a heart attack. So she got me a baby aspirin, which we found out later was one of the worst things to do, or an aspirin. One of the worst things you can do when you're having a stroke is to give the person an aspirin. Anyway, I survived. And then called 911 and sat me down. Now I was sitting down, and called 911, and a few minutes later there were 9 Indianapolis Fire Department firefighters and EMTs from station number 4, which is on the ditch road between 79th and 86th Street, and actually ran into these guys a couple of years ago at a restaurant, and actually one of them had been one of the people who came and got me. Anyway, so they took me to what was at the time called Clarion North, IU North, and didn't have a siren on or anything, just didn't have flashers, just
Taking you there.
took me up there, got into the emergency room. They went through a bunch of tests and things like that, and then said, we need to get you downtown. This was started at 8:30 at night on a Sunday night. So they had to get me downtown. They said they can work with you better. They know they have all the experts and all the equipment and everything. But they said, we don't have any ambulances, so do you mind riding in the helicopters? So I got a helicopter ride down to Methodist Hospital, and it was a beautiful night. Got to see the skyline and everything. And then I was in the emergency room there with all sorts of tests, several CAT scans and stuff. And during that time, and it's getting to be now in the middle of the night, and my wife is there, her sister's with her, and my use of my limbs was getting, I couldn't do anything essentially. I tried to write with my left hand, and it was hard because I began losing my voice. So I started mumbling my speech, and then it went away completely. But then 45 minutes later, it came back. But there were a series of tests and things like that diagnosed it as a stroke. And eventually, it took a while. I think it wasn't until like 4 or 5 in the morning that I got in a room in neurointensive care. And so there I was at IU, at Methodist downtown in the neurointensive care unit, and was there for a total of 9 days, including step down. It was interesting when the person came to me, the caseworker came into my room and started talking about what the options were after this, and they were required to say, well, there's RHI and there's this place and this place and this place. And I stopped her in the middle of it, and I said, I know where I want to go. I know RHI. I had been here before. In fact, I was here when the place opened for an open house, and so I said, I know I want to go to RHI, so you can just stop now. And so we signed all the papers and got ready to go, and a few days later, I ended up out here, and I knew that I had my work cut out for me, because when I met with I guess it would have been a psychologist or a caseworker or something. She's going through everything and telling me what to expect during my time here. And she said, with the severity of your stroke, you're probably going to be here for 2 or 3 weeks. And I said, okay, and I got out of here in 9 days. So I was determined, very determined.
Wow. Going back, you said you were here when it opened, and you just happened to come to the, you said you had like an open house. Now, had you been here since then? I mean, what?
No, I was at that time I was president of the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, so I got invited to all those kinds of things.
Okay.
So that's what I was doing out here, and got a tour and understood what it was all about. So I, without being a patient, without being connected to anybody who had ever been here before, I just knew about the place and was impressed with it and thought, well, you know, I didn't think about it at the time that if something happens to me, this is where I want to go. I just knew that when it did happen to me, this is where I wanted to go.
And then you said you were here, so jumping back, then you said then you were only here for 9 days.
9 days, yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, it started, relatively slowly, like everybody else, I guess. And I remember the first day going into the room where everybody is together for breakfast. And I remember one of the nurses telling me that you get to get out of here when you can serve yourself your meal. So that means with one hand I had and my mouth, I had to open my cereal box and had to pour my milk with my left hand and eat with my left hand and all that stuff. My wife was there. She was helping, but I had to prove that I could do it myself. And again, I was just determined that I was going to get in the big dining room and eat regular food instead of where I was. And so I had basically 2 meals at the group table. It wasn't that I wanted to get away from everybody else. It's just that I wanted to show that I was ready to be able to do this on my own and have a different menu and things like that.
Right.
The first day also, the very significant thing happened is in that a young woman named Melissa Hunter, who had a stroke about the same time that I did, very severe stroke. She was in high school. She was in the newspapers and everything, all over the news, that she was playing in her high school band at her graduation and had a severe brain hemorrhage. And so we were together, and she was there. My wife was helping her and the nurse. We just felt for her. Our heart went out to her. And so during my time here, Melissa and I sort of became buddies to the extent that we could. And we still see her and communicate with her and things like that. So it's been the positive thing about that first day was meeting Melissa, and then seeing where she has come. She's a very severe situation. She still has quite a bit of impairment, but she's great, and we've had a lot of fun with each other.
So, talking about that, bringing her up, and yourself too, that just shows too that stroke's not an old person's. I know lots of times that perception is right.
No, I can't imagine. I saw other patients when I was here who were older, and I just thought this is got to be so much harder for them. I have a good friend who 2 years ago, he's in his mid-80s. He had a stroke very similar to mine. And but he had a lot of support. He had friends and family and things like that, like I did. But he still walks with a cane. His speech is still slurred quite a bit. His mind is as sharp as a tack, better than my memory. But he gets around pretty well. But again, not as well as I, because I was 57 years old, I think, when I had mine, and he was 82 or 83, and it's. Age has a lot to do with it. Timing has a lot to do with it. That support that people bring to you has a lot to do with it. Your faith, I believe, has a lot to do with it. And it's really, the bottom line is, for me, the whole story my story isn't really about me. My story is about all the people who supported me and got me out of here in 9 days, and got me on my way when I was in outpatient rehab, and got me back to being able to play golf even, which I never thought I'd be able to do again, and back to work and driving and all that. All those people, the therapists, the neurologists, the neurosurgeon who woke me up every morning with his very gentle voice, they might whispering in my ear, asking me how I was doing. That was at Methodist, obviously. And then everybody here, Julie Sisson, who's been gone for a long time, but she was the one who worked with me on walking, a physical therapist who helped me work with me on walking. And she was a bulldog, and she knew that I was determined, and we got it done. And it was when I rang that bell when I walked out of the gym that last time, that was a high point. And all the friends that supported me, friends of mine who I knew in the chamber business, who sent me baseball caps and T-shirts and things like that. People from my church who they opened the church on Monday morning. This was on Sunday. They opened the church on Monday morning, and they had a prayer session for me in the church. They sent emails out, and they got emails back literally from churches all over the world, who were praying for me. And I just, again, I know that made a difference. It was much less anything that I did, and much more what other people were doing for me that got me to where I was and got me to where I am today.
Right. I know research does show when you have a good support system and,
Yeah.
and people caring and loving on you. So just real quick, obviously being here at RHI, they tell you you're going to have about 3 to 5 hours every day of therapy.
Yeah.
And so just if you can encapsulate, how that went, and then.
Well, it was hard, especially at first. It really wore you out, and you have the 2 or 3 hours in the morning and 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, and then when that's over, I didn't want to go eat dinner because I was so tired, but I did. I wanted dinner, so but the incredible amount of patience that the physical therapists and occupational therapists have, literally angels. In fact, I did a sermon 1 year to the day after my stroke. I preached a sermon on the angels that we come in contact with in our lives, and how all of those people, all those angels, are the people who helped me get to where I am. And it started with the OTs and the PTs here, and how wonderful they were, how gentle they were, but strong, pushing you and making you, yes, you can do this, just try it one more time or whatever, putting the golf tees and the pegs, and getting the balls to move around those things, and trying to do it with a hand that wasn't working, that I had to lift up to get to do things, and then eventually getting to where I could do it, and slowly, but that whole process, my heart again goes out to all the PTs and OTs, because they were so, well, they're doing what they're doing for a reason, because they are the kind of people that need to do that sort of stuff because they can, because it's a ministry to them. And I told them that all the time. This is your ministry, and the fact that you're doing it says so much about you as a person. And we wouldn't be here. Those of us who have been through this wouldn't be here without those kinds of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, the therapists that do come here, and so far as getting education for them, a lot of the donors watch this, and the foundation does help fund education. So if you were going to explain just real quick, make an appeal.
Well, I would say my wife and I are donors because of what this place has meant to us. I would say anybody who has anybody that they care about or love, these sort of things can happen to anybody at any time. And it's not just a stroke. It could be a traumatic brain injury. It could be as a result of an automobile accident or a fall at home, or could be anything. The likelihood that you're going to be touched by a situation like that is probably relatively high. And therefore, the need for a facility like this, and people like the OTs and the PTs who are here, and the nurses and the people who prepare the meals, and you guys, the need for facilities like this and people like you touches everybody if you think about it. And so I would encourage anybody to think about the impact that it could have on them, or possibly there are people out there who are watching this who actually have had situations, either themselves personally or a friend or a family member, and without facilities like RHI and the people who work here and do the ministry that they do, that you all do, we'd be in a much different situation than we are.
Okay. And you've made a phenomenal recovery.
Yeah, I was telling Mindy earlier that my neurologist and I still talk about this all the time, how I have people fooled. Because if I meet people that I don't know and you get into conversations and start talking about one thing and another, and you tell them that you had a stroke, they look at you like you're from Mars or something, because you had a stroke. Because I basically can function relatively normal. There's some things that I have trouble doing, but they're small things. So I'm still a little impaired, but nobody can tell. and that's a victory for me. I feel good knowing that I've got people fooled, that they can't tell that I had a stroke.
Yeah,
it's because of the work that was done here.
Thank you. Yes. So again, John, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
for coming and
My pleasure.
Yeah, talking about your experience here. And if you want to make a donation to the foundation, and that does help with the education of therapists and the things that are here, and you can see the outcome that John obviously experienced, you can click on the link. We do thank our generous sponsor, Wilson Keyhill in Winningham.